me? Are you taking pictures?
No, you're the speaker, don't worry about it. You're doing an introduction.
The Charleswood Historical Society welcomes you to the third presentation in our Heritage Lecture Series. Len Van Roon Sr. will present tonight a different perspective on World War II, Memories of Children. Len is a veteran of World War II and has many stories to tell, and a longtime resident of Charleswood. I believe he's lived here, 84 years, and he came when he was 10, so do the math. And his son, Len Van Roon Jr., is doing all the techie stuff. Thank you for coming. After this lecture's over, there's the silver collection, there's the Charleswood historical books that Len and Verna Van Roon wrote many years ago, and they've been updated, and refreshments are there at the back. You have 3 different kinds of tea and cookies that look like poppies. All right, take it away.
The idea behind this, of course, is to keep the memory alive for the people who did not come back. And there's been more and more recognition of this, and we'd like to contribute to that. The children especially, if they see a few photographs, it's registered in their minds, and they will carry on the tradition. We have photographs of, and I have relatives in Holland who show how the children there, each grave is given to a child to look at, not to look after, but to recognize and to do. It's part of the procedure that on the day, their Freedom Day, they go to the cemeteries and keep the tradition alive, and they do such a wonderful job. So we're trying to do the same thing to keep the memory alive for our young people. This sign, of course, you'll notice that it says low taxes on it. What we're trying to do is also give you a little background. It's not just about children, it's about we have to give you a little bit of a setting in case you don't know where I come from, but that's it, Charleswood. And that sign was put up after the war this is all the people who were in the military, not just the 17 or so that lost their lives, but this recognizes everybody that signed up.
There's about 220, I think, just from the little village of Charleswood.
This picture looks like a real setup, you know. It looks like a posed picture. It's not a posed picture. It's a real picture. The 4 boys, the 4 Parkin boys, it has to be just the turn of the century, because these people also joined the military in World War I. He says words, there we go. There's the 4 Parker boys. That's the same little 4 boys that are in the original picture. And you know, we'd like to recognize those little Charleswood boys being in World War I.
Yeah, and they all came back alive.
Yes, they did.
Which wasn't always the case.
This, yeah, that's, I want to accent. I had a very nice girl. But I thought that getting married and going overseas was just, we both decided that was just not the way to go. But the thing is that I thought you were such a special prize, so what I did was, during the years I was away, I wrote 1,100 letters. And somebody said, "You did what?" I said, "Well, that was worth it, you know, I had to put on a special effort," and it was a special effort and it worked. Also want to give you a background of, this is our place on Charleswood Road. I was a teenager there. There was just my mother and I, and my father died when I was just 10, and we looked after, it was a little poultry farm, and we made a living. But the reason I put this in is to show that, you know, I was a teenager at the time, and I was the only one, the two of us made the business work. But then when war was declared, I wasn't that anxious to go into the military. But I thought, well, there's just, I'm looking after my mother in the place, and that's a good enough reason. But we had conscription. That is, everybody received a notice, military age, received a notice to serve in the military. And I received my notice, and I thought, well, I'll tell them that you know, my mother needs me here. And that didn't work. They needed bodies, and that was it. But going into the war, I thought you had two choices. You could, as an objector, you could stay in Canada. You were trained militarily, but you stayed in Canada, or you could volunteer for overseas service. And I thought, well, you know, being in, you might as well go the whole hog.
My dad says that some of the people were referred to as, with a little bit of derision, as zombies, if they didn't go into battle and they just stayed. But there was lots of important jobs to do. People had to operate canteens, they had to do the work at home. So no matter how people served, it wasn't just people in battle that played an important role. But sometimes there was some feelings of, some people would really brag and talk about all the wonderful things they did, and sometimes they never got anywhere close to a battle, and they just gave out confectionaries at the store or whatever. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I always say I went to university, you know. Yeah, I did. I went there for basic training. The military took over.
That's Taché Hall.
So you got to brag about something. And when I came home, we started up the poultry business again, Verna and I. And poor Verna, she had to clean up 1 million eggs, I think. And when I finally in 1970, when it looked as if it was impossible to carry on, and so I worked for the city, and she says, 2 checks a month? You know, she was flabbergasted. And she was glad not to have to clean eggs anymore. Yeah, this was a Sherman tank that we used. We were not, we didn't do the tank fighting, but we had to blend in with the armored stuff. Our job was to direct artillery fire and to assist whatever it was, infantry or tanks. We had to assist them if they got into a bad position or needed an area covered with artillery fire. We were able to supply that, but we traveled with them. In fact, we got a real bawling out one time because we were close to the head of a column, and this colonel come roaring up, and they said, "Will you guys stay back? If we need you, we want you in one piece." He said, so they took good care of us, and it helped, you know.
The job my dad did, I think the longest that anyone lasted in his unit at it was 6 weeks, and he lasted for years. So it was pretty dangerous going out ahead and seeing where the artillery fire was landing and spotting, climbing up in church steeples so you had a good view, but then you could get picked off. So I'm really glad that he was very cautious.
You see the little church on the left? There's a little tower on it there, just on the far left.
Yeah.
That we used that as an observation post, and believe it or not, my daughter, who's just gone over to Europe, and she's going to that village, and they're going to show her that little tower, and they're going to take her up there. There was another building that was, it was a 5-story tower, very wild, and the local historian is going to take them up there too. They said at their own risk. Yeah. Yes, this is on close to where the Stonehenge is. There was an artillery range there, and we were there for practice. And the two fellows on the left also did observation post work. The one just next to me, Frank Walden, he was a brilliant person and a close friend. The reason we got together so often was he was Walden, so that was W, and mine was Van Roon, so that's V. So we ended up on pay parades and all kinds of things and got to know each other pretty well. But he was a brilliant person, but a little bit too daring for that job. And so those two boys on the left did not make it.
My dad named my third name as Walden. People say, oh, that's a bit strange, but I hope that sometimes I'm a bit of a daredevil in his footsteps. Sometimes he gets me in trouble.
Well, you'll never do what he did. Okay, this was in Frieseuth in Germany. I had a little camera that I bought for $2.50 in London, and we couldn't get much in the way of film, but Verna once in a while got me a roll of film. And the thing was just laying on the floor of the tank, and we were using this as a command post. And I saw that thing and I thought, hey, there's a chance. So I said, it's photo op time. And I had a little tripod which would, if you sneezed, it would fall over. But it served to hold the camera and take this picture. And as a photo op, you see, he picked up a teddy bear, the other one picked up a bottle. I picked up that nice fedora hat. So. But the photograph turned out to be very, very nice.
Not everything in wartime is always battles. There's a little bit of kibitz. So we put in 2 pictures that aren't really about battles at all.
Yeah, puppy dogs loved the military. And because the fellas also had food, these dogs were usually, the houses were destroyed and the towns were destroyed, and so they were kind of orphan dogs. And the guys would pick them up and use them, they'd keep them in the trucks. And this little guy, he rode in a truck and he was quite happy, and then we stopped one time to do a lot of firing, and the first time the guns went off, the dog deserted.
Ran away, never came back. So here's story 1. We have 9 of them, children in war.
Yeah. This is in Scotland, in Glasgow. We used to go up there on leave because the Scotch people were very kind to us. The British people were very kind to us too, but they sort of hung back. But in Scotland, they treated us real nice. And Verna had a cousin in Glasgow. So I went down there, we went to the park, and these little boys were playing cowboys and Indians. It's wartime. Part of Glasgow was destroyed through heavy bombing, and but these little boys were still little boys. They were rooting around in the park, and they wanted their picture taken with me, so I graciously allowed them to take me there. And the funny part was, there was this heavy Scotch accent, They said, the one said, bang, bang, he says, you're dead. And the other one says, I'm no dead. So, this is in Holland. This is still wartime. And we were stalled along the Rhine and we couldn't go any further. It's one of the few places where we stayed for some time. Otherwise, we were always on the move. And this was a celebration of the liberation of their little town, Flyman, and the children put on a parade, and they posed in their costumes. And believe it or not, my daughter, who's going over there now, is going to meet one of those little girls.
And she's 70, in her
70
70s
years
now.
old.
70.
Yes. This is part of the parade they put on. If you'll notice, those boys have German helmets on.
Story 2.
Go ahead. Oh,
Sorry.
yes. This is one of the houses in that town. You'll notice, because of the concussion of the shells and the V1s, when they exploded, they blew the windows out of this house. And what the Dutch people were very fussy, and they didn't want that. So they replaced it with one little window in there. And the place we were in, that window was blown out 7 times. The roof, those are slates, and when the explosion lifts them, they all slide down, and then the roof is exposed. My daughter was in touch with the local historian here, and he said that street sign there was just taken down in the 1970s. She sent pictures, photographs to him to get information.
My dad has a story about the guns going off and being sold out, and they were staying with people. There were still people from the village. And there's a story about a baby and the guns going off.
Yeah, well, we had a home in the town and used it for a command post. And our job at the front, we had brakes, and the guys handling the guns, they were on for 24 hours. They were always available. So sometimes we did some of the work for them. We gave them a rest. So when we were in this house, we did the figures on artillery boards. We did the calculations, and when the news came in that there was we were to do some shelling, the one fellow that I was working with, he said, "This is different here." He says, "You go out in the hall and you yell fire orders." I thought, what the heck's that about? So anyway, I followed instructions. We got orders to do some artillery work. Went out in the hall and yelled fire orders, and then went back and did the calculations. And I said, "What was that about?" He said, "Well, they have a brand new baby there, just a few months old. And when those guns went off, the guns were very close proximity. And the child was just, would just yell her heads off. And they said, we found out that if we go out there and tell them they're fire orders, the mother picks up the baby. And then when the guns go off, the baby would stir, but was quite safe in the mother's arms. And after the guns quit firing, she put them back down again. So that's a military procedure."
These were the V1s?
Yeah,
Pretty horrible things.
Yeah, they were launched from Germany, and they, Antwerp. They were heading towards Antwerp because we captured Antwerp intact, and it was a big shipping place. So these things were sent out from parts of Holland, and they never, that little town in Vlijmen, these darn things would come down, and when they hit that town, they would blow up half a block of houses. And we didn't understand as young men how the parents would feel, but the home that we were in Vlijmen, the husband was away on the other side of town, and one of those things landed, and he didn't know whether it landed in the area of his home, and he was just totally devastated. It didn't, it wasn't close enough to damage him, but we just accepted the fact that these things fell down and things blew up, but the parents of families, that was a different ball game altogether. That is, yeah. I don't think I can get away with this, man.
The gun positions and the towns are maybe 5-6 kilometers apart, maybe 10 miles.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out how to explain that these guns are about 5 miles back from the front. And we had to go, we were the eyes of the thing, we had to see where the problem was, and then we'd send the message back. But where the heck's Blyman? I can't even find the darn place.
It's just above the road we took.
Oh, yeah. Where was it?
Oh,
There it is. That's a little town where those children were.
Yes.
And we had to go down this road to England, this area here. And we could see our position, we could see across here into the enemy was on this side, and we were in this place here. But we wanted to give you an idea that, you know, the people watching this stuff is at this area. The guns were in this area. They had about a 5-mile range. The officer I was with, Captain Lockhart up here, he, we went down, when the heck am I lost again?
That could be dangerous. Don't get lost. After D-Day,
I
one of the trucks did get lost.
We walked along here. We went to this town and this town here, and we could see the enemies on this side of the river. We were here, but that turned out to be a disaster because we had a not too bright officer that gave our position away, and they mortared that pretty heavily, and our officer and the signaller were wounded here. They took my place, actually. He was such a good guy, the officer, and he went up early in the morning to do the observing, and then he came down and I went up to take his place, and 20 minutes later he was back up there again. I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, "You know, you've got a 2-hour shift and I got 20 minutes. Am I doing it wrong?"
That's good. You're just getting a bit close.
Oh, okay.
It's making me shake.
I have my technical expert here.
So,
But he came up after 20 minutes and he said, I said, "Well, that's great." And he said, "Well, I don't like what's happening." He said, "So go down and have a coffee and I'll take over." But that's when they were hit and badly wounded. So we lost a good man.
these are the self-propelled guns. I think there was 24 in your unit. But my dad said they could call on as many as 500 guns to file at once if there was real trouble.
Yeah.
So one of the most interesting stories that I have is going into a school, and one of the little boys that was quite a terror, he said, "I got a question," and the teacher went like this. And he said, "Did you have a gun?" Oh, he said, "Wait a minute. Before I ask this question, you don't have to answer it if it's too sensitive or something I shouldn't be answering. But, did you have a gun? Did you shoot anybody? Can you tell us about it?" And one of the things my dad talks about sometimes is it's kind of like operating a drone if you're working with guns. People are getting killed, but it's a lot like warfare today. It's a lot of long distance warfare where things are happening from many miles away. And so it's something that I've been in 3 classrooms where each time one of the little boys really wanted to know if my dad had a gun and did he shoot anybody. But the one that was the most of a terror, he made sure to be quite sensitive for him about asking.
Yeah, this that is not a tank. This is a gun. You've seen the guns with the 2 wheels and the barrel sticking out, but these here this is armored, and the crew is in behind it, and so it's called a self-propelled artillery piece. And they were very good in that they could go over the roughest terrain or even heavy water. They would just cruise through it.
So we've just got a couple pictures of shells.
Yeah,
There's some here actually of the shell casings.
that's a shell casing over there, that big one, and that little one, that's a 25-pound, this one here.
This is really important because my grandma this came over from Holland. Somebody made these, and when she made cookies, she was on the corner of our parking lot, she would do this. And then we would run and get cookies, and this was full of powder, and that's what blew the shell out.
Yeah.
If you look at the case in the display case in the library, there's an actual big heavy shell, and that's the part that blew apart and hurt people. So, but for us, it meant cookies were good.
Okay. Yeah.
That's all shell casings.
Yeah. They would pile up. This is the nose of the shell, and that is has gunpowder inside of it. But that sets off the larger part, which blows to pieces. But this is where you could set the range on this type. And they found one of these in Manitoba, close to Brandon, in a field. And there was an artillery range there, and man, they had it blocked off with ropes, and they had the disposal place, and so we decided that maybe we shouldn't bring that.
We got one sitting out by our fire pit. My dad sent me for show and tell in grade 4. He sent me with the shell with the end on, because that was a pretty interesting thing. Didn't blow up. My dad has story number 3 is about blankets and shells like this that were pretty volatile.
Well, we had captured an ammunition wagon. They still had horses drawing ammunition wagons for the infantry in Germany, and it was abandoned, and we were in position there, and the local people came out, and they looked at this wagon, and they said, you know, our children, we really haven't enough blankets. They stole all our blankets, and there's a bunch of blankets on that wagon. And I said, well, fine, you know, this is war booty. I said, it's yours, just help yourself. And they said, yeah, but it's got all that ammunition piled on top of it. And I thought, oh, well, what the heck? So I went up and I took all this heavy ammo and I threw it in the ditch, you know, and they were very thankful. They had their blankets, and one of our tank driver, he said, that wasn't very bright, you know.
Because it could have blown up.
He said, Chuck on that. I said, yeah, but it's got safety features, you know, for handling. And he said, I still don't think it was very bright.
The Shunin family.
Yeah, this is the family where my family is going. This is the place where we were stuck for some time, and this family was very, very good to us. The tank driver and I slept upstairs in that house. The family slept down the basement, but the children. It was Christmas time, and the parents had scraped together some stuff, and they said, you're going to have a Christmas dinner at our place. And the children thought this was wonderful. But we were up at the front, and they were still convinced that we would be there for Christmas. And just Christmas morning, we got orders to go back to the house, and they had white tablecloth, and the grandpa was sitting at the table at the one end, and we had a beautiful Christmas dinner. But the children, when we arrived, this is driving up with a Sherman tank up to the front of the house, and we're at the window. They knew we were going to be there for Christmas.
My dad, they used to go, there was barges sunk in the river with coal, and they would get some of the wet coal and give it to them for heating for the family. And I think there's one story about underwear. One of the guys tried for days and days to wash his underwear. What was he washing it in?
Well, we had just a container, and he put water in a little fire under it, and it was cooking out there, and then it got too late, and he left it, and the lady of the house, Mrs. Scoden, that he came home, he said, somebody stole my underwear, I had it out there washing it. And I said, Mrs. Golan, what happened? And she says, I couldn't stand walking by that thing anymore. She says, I took it out and washed it.
So they got pretty close to some of the families.
We didn't, yeah. Oh, yes.
This is their bakery.
Yeah, this is where we drove the tank up to in front of this place. That was the bakery at that time. And we slept upstairs there. The town they lost an awful lot of people with those V1s exploding in the town.
And my dad still has a bread wrapper from their bakery. So he sent that over to them. They said it's a house now, but it was a bakery until, I think, 20 years ago.
Yeah. So I say very important things like that, bread wrappers.
This is my favorite story. Take your time with this one.
Thank you. We were parked one time waiting for orders, and a young couple with small children, they'd been hiding in a barn, and just because when the fighting was going on, and after they went by, this was the position we were in, we were just waiting for orders, and these two parents, they were poorly dressed. The children had just ordinary clothes on because they had just gone and hidden, and it was cold. There was snow on the ground, or frost, I'm not sure which, and the children were just blue. They were so cold and they were shivering, and our tank driver said, you know, those kids are in pretty bad shape. He said, let's thaw them out under the exhaust. You know, it was melting the snow underneath, and this is a 30-cylinder Chrysler motor puffing away, and the exhaust goes down like I think it's a word. Never mind.
There it is.
Oh, there it is. So this full length of the thing is exhaust, so it's not just one place. It was coming down all the way here, melting the snow underneath. So he said, you know, we could thaw those kids out. I said, yeah, well, carbon monoxide. I said, great, we'll get rid of them. He said, no. He says, you hold one, I'll hold the other, and we'll keep their heads out at the side, you know, off to one side, and keep their bodies under the tank thing. So that sounded rather possible. And we did that, and, you know, within 20 minutes, you know, we thawed them out real good. It's a highlight of my military career.
They weren't blue or purple anymore.
No.
But there's definitely some humanity in the midst of war.
Well, the house was wrecked, and the parents had to patch the windows and start a fire in the stove so we could thaw them out under the exhaust.
So there's no pictures to these, but there's 3 or 4 stories that just stuck in my dad's mind. And he might drop one of them and pick up another one, but after 70 years when something sticks in your mind, there's probably a reason for it. 2 little boys with their wagon and their moms
Yeah.
after D-Day.